I don't really know how I feel about The Secret of NIMH, but I do know that I definitely don't agree with its very high rating on IMDb. At the time of recording, it has a very impressive 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb across 50,000 reviews and ratings and a Metascore of 76. And I say this because I'm going to say I don't really enjoy it, and I will explain why without giving any spoilers. But it does seem to be well received by many, so if you're curious, check it out. But I feel like it's not so much that it's all style and no substance. I feel like it's more convoluted than I think it needs to be. I think it tries to be almost too clever and too creative, and that means that the storytelling isn't actually very good, and it's really not that enjoyable. This was released in 1982. It's a feature film directed by Don Bluth, and it's adapted by Don Bluth, John Pomeroy, Gary Goldman, and Will Finn, based on the novel Mrs. Frisby and the Rats of NIMH by Robert C. O'Brien. And we have a voice cast including Derek Jacobi, Don DeLuise, Shannon Doherty, and various others. And yes, the voice acting is very good, no problems there. A field mouse needs to move her family before the farmer begins ploughing the fields, but her young son, Timothy, is sick. Can she safely relocate her family? Will the others help or hinder the move? And, well, there are some other aspects to the narrative as well. In fact, definitely quite a bit more, and it's a little bit mysterious, and it is quite detailed, and I don't want to spoil it, but at the same time, it seems like there's a lot of fluff, almost to an extent kind of smoke and mirrors, where it seems like there's something mysterious and interesting happening, and that part of it seems quite creative and cleverly written, but actually the execution is not very good. I don't think it's engaging. I do think it's a bit convoluted. I do think the narrative is a little all over the place. I think there are too many elements that take away from what ultimately could have just been a really interesting story if it hadn't tried to make things too secretive and complicated. It's not too complicated to understand, but it tries to be more than I think it needed to be. Now, would that completely change the story if they simplified things? Yes. And if the writer, I'm assuming it's close to the story in the narrative, if the writer wanted to tell a certain story, then that's fair enough. I'm not going to tell them they should have told a different story, but that doesn't mean it translates well for a film audience. But again, many people seem to have enjoyed it, but I just don't think the narrative is as good as the writer thinks it is, and that's purely my opinion. My opinion aren't facts. You might feel differently, and that's absolutely fine, but I can understand that it's clever and creative, but it's not very well executed, at least in the film. I can't comment on the novel. That being said, part of it is sweet. The animals do look lovely. The animation really is great in general. But the film itself is quite miserable. There are not that many uplifting moments. The animation is also quite dark. Dark in terms of the colours, not just in terms of the mood. And visually, the characters are great, the sweet moments are nice, but it's not consistently amazing to look at. Not a lot of light at all in terms of the colours or the mood, but there are definitely exceptions, and those exceptions are really, really nice to look at. There are magical elements that I really did not care for, and other than that, there's not much to say. The voice acting is good. The animation style is nice. The colours and light, not so much. The music is pretty great. I really did like the music in this one. I just don't think the film, as a story, is very well executed. I don't think it had enough balance to be a pleasant experience. The voice acting is good. I do like some of the characters, but in general, I think there's a lot of hype, and I don't think it even comes close to delivering what that overall IMDb rating suggests it would. I ultimately don't think it's a very good story.